Welcome to GameWell, the podcast about a thriving future in games, from well-being and creativity to optimization and performance.
Welcome to this episode of GameWell. Today I have with me Victoria Williams, a researcher in music psychology and a co-founder of Audicin. Audicin is a company focusing on nervous system regulation, particularly with the integration of music, and they have collaborations with very interesting artists. I have tested it myself and had to get my my better earphones because it was such a pleasurable experience. But Vicky, hi, welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself as well in case I've missed something?
Thank you so much for the kind invitation. It's my pleasure to be with you here today. I'm looking forward so much to our conversation. So I'm Dr. Victoria Williamson formally, but please call me Vicky. And I've worked for 15 years as an academic crossing the disciplines between music psychology and neuroscience. And now I'm forging a pathway as the chief scientist of Audicin, making sure that everything that Audicin does in providing music for well-being is evidence-based, science-driven, and effective for the user.
Amazing. And you've just made the transition from being more in the scientific research space and coming into more of a corporate thing, and then bridging the two worlds in a way, right? We've had some conversations before, so I just want to make sure that the listener is getting some of the details that I've received from you as well.
That's absolutely right. It's my first attempt of bridging the corporate world from my science roots. But the two it's not seamless. It's a bit of a bumpy road, but new language, new forum. But the ultimate aim of my last lab at the University of Sheffield, was music and well-being. It was to move us from the intuitive application of music in our everyday lives for well-being. We know music is good for us. We know it can help people in hospitals, people in care settings, people in the community with their well-being. But how do we move from that intuitive sense to the informed application? So how do we put some scientific understanding and some evidence-based knowledge on the amazing effects that we see in music therapy, in music care, in music medicine? Let's systematize it and then let's learn from that so that we can provide the best care for each individual person as they need it, at the time that they need it. So that was always the aim of where my research was going. And then Audicin is 100% true to that. So I'm keeping my core going with me on this journey.
Amazing. And I guess in order for us to provide solutions for the public, it needs to be something that they consume in one way or another. So it's a logical step to move from the high quality informative space to making it a practical application of the knowledge, as you said. For listeners that are not aware what the field of music psychology is, I mean, it's implied in the name, but let's maybe deepen it out a little bit. What's the principles? What's the overlying ideas in music psychology?
So psychology is the study of human experience and behavior. So music psychology is simply those principles applied to our lives with music. And music is with us from pre-cradle, even in utero, all the way through to the end of life. So in the same way that you might find a psychologist who specializes in developmental psychology, how children grow and how they learn and how they behave, you'll find somebody interested in developmental music psychology, how children interact with music, how they begin to produce music, what music does to a developing brain. And you can find that because music is so much a part of who we are as humans. Wherever there are humans, there is music. So wherever there is the study of humankind, there'll be the study of music psychology.
Wow, that's a good introduction. I love that.
Thank you.
What is music to you?
Everything.
It's the beat of life.
It is. In my personal life, music has been my my solace and my inspiration, my creativity and my force, my individuality and my expression as an amateur performer myself, as an experimenter. There isn't a musical instrument that I haven't enjoyed having a play around with, including my own voice, such as it is. But that's what music is. It's a sandbox for me. It's fun. It always was. And imagine my joy when I found that my intellectual interest, which was always the study of human behavior, psychology was my specialism at university. Imagine my joy when I found I could marry the two. I could have my passion and my love for music and my curiosity about it, to be fair. Why does this sound make me feel this way? Why does this sound affect this person? What has being interested in music and studying music done to my brain and body? All the questions that I might have had about my musical life and my musical understanding, that was a field of study that I could go into that. And I said as long as it kept me financially afloat and remained intellectually and emotionally satisfying, that's what I would do. And those boxes are still being ticked, hence I'm still here.
That's great. Well, let's explore a little bit. How does music affect the brain? How does music affect the human?
So with the brain, the studies of musical impact on brain structure really began in the 1990s. And at that stage, we mostly had structural scanning. So you could tell what parts of the brain were physically changing in response to music. And some of the earlier studies were very interesting. They showed that people who had trained in music had different structural features, especially in the auditory areas, which we might expect. But we started to see what we now understand, which is the global, multiple, simultaneous stimulation of music that is delivered to the brain. You will see growth and changes and modulations in areas of the brain that are involved with movement around the top of the brain. Certainly in the frontal cortex, where all the calculating, where all the logic, where all the conscious thought is, right down to the core of the brain as well, the mammalian brain that comes up from the spinal column into the ancient structures that we share with many of our animal cousins, that those deep limbic systems, those emotion systems, deep memory systems are very, very intertwined with music stimulation. So as brain science moved in from the structural to the functional, so we started to see those pictures of the brain that fMRI give, and structures and technologies like TDCS, which shows the water changes in the brain. You start to see the brain, how the brain is using oxygen in the brain or how water molecules are moving around in the brain. And that's giving us clues as to how music moves within the brain, what it's connecting together. That's what you don't get with the structural stuff, is what connections are forged with music, what areas of the brain are talking to each other because music is their shared language. And that's really where people have found the biggest effect of music, that there is some evidence for music specialism within the brain. It's possible in some cases even to look at brains and say this person is a violinist as opposed to a pianist because of the very different training effects of the different hands that have had on the brain structures within. Of course, there's a lot of interest in what we call transfer effects, whether or not these changes we see in the brain are realized in other aspects of our lives. Does being a musician make you more emotionally intelligent? Does it make you smarter? And so on and so forth. That's a really interesting and fruitful line of inquiry, but it's a very difficult form of study, simply because you can't do controlled research. You can't take two children, give one music and not the other, and see what happens over the course of the lifetime. So it's very, very hard to unstitch the impacts of music versus the genetics, the old sort of environment versus genes debate. But the idea that music changes our individual brains is beyond doubt. It absolutely has multiple simultaneous effects for the good on the human brain.
Okay, so I have a lot of questions already. One thing would be music is perceived not just with the sensation of auditory experience, but also with the visceral experience, right? Because there's also vibrations that are experienced in other parts of the body that are not exclusive to the auditory system.
Right.
I want to unpack a little bit more how music changes physical responses in the body, and how one and the other kind of has an effect on the human being, and how that can be used in both your overall well-being and regulation of the self, but also in, for example, for our audience, how they could use some of this information to integrate experiences within the immersive experience of game development. So it's a three-part question here, right? It's how is it experienced? How does it affect the body or affect the body? And then what are the implications for one to use for their own personal well-being? And then the third one will be, how could someone apply this to game development to integrate it in the creative process of their own?
Right. So in terms of body versus brain reactions to music, it's a super interesting question, because you can obviously measure the body as it reacts to music, as we think of the body. So if we think neck down, pretty much. Yeah. So you can measure your heart rate, you can measure blood pressure, you can take blood and saliva samples, and you can look at hormones and so on and so forth. And we do see reactions within body measures to music. So you can measure cortisol, for example, in saliva, and you can measure growth factors in the blood, and you could see positive responses to music. As well, heart rate variability. So many of us nowadays have these beautiful smart rings and watches that are monitoring our body systems. There you go. Well done, you. And these are giving us all an insight, growing every day, into how our individual body responses shift with musical sound. So this is really exciting, because the crux of individual responses to music has always been that we are the culmination of our life experiences. So yes, we all have certain core reactions to music. We know from music psychology studies that there are universals that we perceive in music. So even if somebody has never heard traditional Western tonal music, they are very good at picking out what is likely to be a happy song from a sad song, and an angry song versus a happy song. So there's a long-standing theory in psychology about the universality of human emotion, and that is expressed. You can look at Ekman faces. Ekman's studies showing people respond with the same kind of facial expression to basic emotions. And a lot of that applies to how we express ourselves in music as well. So whilst there are universals, a great deal of how we react to music, body and brain, comes down to our lives with music, how we have begun to create our own musical lives, what emotions we have tied to the music that we heard at critical moments in our life, at the joyful moments, at the gut-wrenching moments, at the peaceful moments, at the forceful moments. And that presents music psychology and neuroscience with an interesting conundrum, because you can show overall brain effects, but there are studies of music psychology where the scientists will literally say, could you please bring into the lab the music that you find most evocative? Because that is where they will get the best brain responses, using the music that the participant themselves says has this effect on them, as opposed to playing one piece of music and expecting everybody to react in the same way. You can expect very similar reactions on very broad categories: happy, sad, angry, fearful. Everybody senses the fear in the Jaws theme. Yeah, that minor second, that grinding minor second has that effect on just about everybody. But what touches me as a piece of music, what the piece of music that gives me goosebumps, is unlikely to give most people goosebumps.
Wow. Okay.
So when it comes to measuring, that's the crux. So when it comes to realizing it in a gaming format as well, that's the crux, where you can apply universals to a degree, but if you're going to maximize that immersive experience, just like with well-being, individualization is where we need to go.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is there is a universal transmission of tone, of emotion through the media of music then that can be for everyone, no matter where you're from and what your unique makeup is. But there's an individual approach to which pieces of music give you a certain response or evoke the right kinds of emotion here.
Right.
Which is there's so many interesting variables to this, I think, because there's it ties into who you are as a person, but also the experiences you've had and coupled with it, right? So it might not necessarily be the emotion that you've had, but also the media you consumed that evoked the emotion, and then that piece of art can bring you back to that, right? And so individualization is what you're saying is something that would be helpful, and as we're moving towards that, then it'll be more and more effective how you can apply sensory stimulation, particularly through music, to the individual. And so if you want to apply it to games,
that's right.
then know your audience is kind of another layer of knowing your audience would be what evokes emotion in the individual players that are in your category for the people that you're designing this piece of art for.
Yeah, and there's an intermediate level. You don't have to say, well, if you can't give each individual person the piece of music that works for them, just stick to the universals. You can go to an intermediate level, like you say, where you look at your audience and you can look at personality traits of an audience. You can look at even age group of an audience, because that will dictate what music they were listening to at certain key developmental periods where we expect responses to music to be at their strongest. And that comes from periods known in psychology as the reminiscence bumps. So these are periods in your youth and early adulthood which are transformative for your individual life story. They're moments that are pivotal because your biology was changing so significantly, and for that reason, emotions are heightened. But also world experiences, with leaving school, becoming emancipated, having financial freedom, getting a first job. These are all very emotionally driven times. And what we know from the psychology of memory is that when you throw emotion into the period of time where a memory is laid down, it will receive a particular saliency. Note, I don't say accuracy, because it's not necessary. Our memories are not flashbulb cameras that take a perfect picture of everything just because you are in a heightened emotional state. But you will absolutely believe that memory. And also you will be driven to relive it to a certain degree. And that's a basic tenet of psychology of memory. If you revise something, it's like treading a path through grass. You go over it, over it, over it, over it. It's going to be a well-worn path, and you're going to get to that memory very quickly and easily. And so because of our access to recorded music nowadays, it's very easy to go down those memory lanes over and over again and arrive quickly and easily at the memory that's at the end of that path.
And would you say it's hard to differentiate, I understand that, but would you say the salience that comes for memory building, is it through emotion or is it the sensual richness, the sensorial richness? So the more senses are integrated in the experience and the more emotions. So it's kind of a chicken and egg question, I guess. What's weighing more and what comes first? I mean, can you even define that?
It's an interesting, yes, question how you would do that. So what popped to my mind when you said that was the unique place of live music in
Mm.
our on our memory experiences. So recorded music, especially compressed modern recording music, so minimizes a lot of the sensory experience. And if you put that against a live
Mm.
concert experience, there's a great deal of research showing that that has multiple transformative effects that you don't get to the same degree with recorded music. And many people would say that certainly in some circumstances, music therapy, when it's live for the right population, is important because of the multisensory aspects that come with it. So if you are treating somebody in a sensorially deprived condition, and I'm thinking of people who become isolated through their life condition. So that could be a dementia. It could be
Mhm.
somebody living in a vegetative state, in coma, long term in hospice. That sort of interaction with live music is really a part of what makes that kind of therapy super effective. But the beauty of recorded music that sort of shrunk and compressed for a long time, so we could get it onto smaller devices, so we could feed this human obsession of taking our music around with us. Um, because of now technology is expanding out again, we're having more and more access to more analog recordings and to recordings where we can get this sense of superior engineering and immersive sound. And we're coming into, wow, this is actually really quite effective. And I have done studies in the past where people can not only differentiate between highly compressed music, say for a CD, and a studio master, which is roughly towards an analog recording. Not only can they tell the difference, they prefer to listen to the studio
Mm.
master. They sense more emotion transmitted in the studio master. So we are very capable of receiving these extra sensorial messages. And the way that live music does that, recorded music is going back to
Uh,
preserving these extrasensorial experiences because they do impact us and they do matter.
okay, so I guess that was an answer. So the sensorial richness translates into a deeper salient experience, is what I'm hearing from that.
It's more evocative,
Mm.
definitely, and it is both perceptually and neurologically speaking a different experience.
Mm. Okay.
So there are factors like emotion which will cross over and play into it. You could listen to a very compressed recording in a highly emotional state, and you will get a different combination of richness and salience within the neurological encoding that happens at that point in time. But if you compare straight, compressed versus analog music, there's a difference, undoubtedly. And
Mm.
yeah, we're coming into an exciting period now where we're starting to understand how these extra elements of the sensorial sensation really impact on the body and can be channeled in a good way.
Wow. So how is this happening? How are people experiencing this more? Or how is it making its way back into the everyday person's lives?
Well, vinyl's coming back slowly
Mm.
but surely, which I adore because I love vinyl. Um, I grew up listening to all kinds of things on vinyl. My father has a huge vinyl collection, and I have his Celestion Ditman 66 studio speakers in my house, and it's my pleasure to listen to. I'm a Beatles girl, so I had to have all their original albums, most of them, the ones that were pressed in the 60s. I love them. I love that sound coming out of those speakers. But yeah, on the market, vinyl's growing every year as a sound market. people are investing more in sound rooms in their own home. Really, really nice speakers. The quality speaker market is booming too, as well as, headphones, different, ways in which people can enrich and get the most out of the sensorial cues that have been encoded into that recording for you to enjoy. Like how can I get the best out of it? How can I, really enjoy the richness that is provided within this recording? So both the music industry and the music production technology side of things is following consumer demand, which is, we're liking this and we want more.
I love that. And so, as always, your purchasing power is your right to vote. And so, if you hear this and you experience it and you love it, then do vote with your actions. Vicky, I want to kind of go into Audicin because it ties really nicely into how people can use it in their lives. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about Audicin and the work at Audicin and how you're pursuing this?
So Audicin is designed as a nervous system regulation tool. It provides the benefits of meditation without having to meditate. So in this modern world where we are all under far too much constant pressure, we are putting our nervous systems through the ringer. We are feeding them with far too much cortisol, far too regularly and for too long, as well as other stress hormones and pressures. And we're really feeling it now in the symptomologies that we see, which is massive increases in burnout, as well as a varied symptomology that will come along with nervous system dysregulation, which could be headaches, back and neck pain, stomach issues, as well as stress and anxiety that we think of traditionally as being nervous system reactivity. So how do we deal with this? The problem is we're in a very busy world with a very busy life. I'm trying to make it in the corporate world. I have 2 toddlers, one of whom is severely disabled. I have an extremely full day. How on earth can I build in nervous system regulation for my own well-being on top of this so that I stay well enough to look after my family and to look after myself for as long as possible? That's where Audicin came in. Myself and the other 2 founders, Laura Avonius and Maria Souza Alia, we wanted to provide a music tool that can help people, really seriously help people regulate this nervous system issue without adding to their day. Meditation is wonderful. Meditation is effective. Absolutely. Science, medicine, all agree. But do we all have the time to do that on a regular basis? It's hard. It's super hard. I love to do it when I can. But Audicin is pop on the headphones and get on with the day. It is nervous system regulation without any effort. And it plays into the fact that we have listened to music and our brains have developed to process music easily and in the background. So we can now, with the knowledge of how the brain processes music effectively in the background, create music tracks that not only work effectively in the background of our lives, so they do not add to our pressure and load, but on top of that, they are benefiting our nervous system. They are regulating it. The tracks are designed to take the heat out of nervous system reactivity so that you're not experiencing the big spikes throughout the day of cortisol. You stay more level. And if you stay more level, you don't become so exhausted by the end of the day. There is time and there is energy left. One of our users put it so beautifully when she said, Audicin has given me back that hour of collapse when I came home at the end of the day. I can walk in the door and say, come on, kids, let's go to the park, rather than just leave me for an hour. And I could totally relate to that. It's a case of taking the heat out of the nervous system that we are feeding into it. Just, making things more balanced, more manageable day to day. And you don't need to do a lot of it. This is the point. Listening to Audicin doesn't need to be, I need to have it on 8 hours a day for it to work. You know, the scientific elements within the Audicin sound that actually regulate brain waves in order to keep them stable take 10 minutes to start working. So it's a very minimal effort in order to achieve something that is so important going forward, which for our own well-being, which is to manage the stresses of the nervous system that we have to cope with. We can't change the world, but we can change how we react.
Yeah, again, a lot of things to unpack. As you're saying, life is very busy. We have so many things to manage. We have so many things to do. And
Right.
I love meditation too. I mean, I dedicated a whole period of my life to really dive deep into philosophy and meditation, all these practices. And
Good for
from
you.
my background,
Amazing.
it's been a thing, right? But even for me that has gone so deep down that rabbit hole, it is difficult to integrate it into my daily life because it's stopping. And I think one of the challenges, and if I'm feeling this challenge, then it must be very difficult for other people as well, where you're going from the hecticism of life where you need to shovel free some time that you don't feel you have, even though time is very it's perceptual. It's not really the chronological time is set, but the perception of time and what we can accomplish is definitely a perception and not reality. So if I'm having challenges with that and all of these things are stacking on top, and we have high, as you're saying, nervous system activity is very high, and then you need to go and sit down because you don't have time to do it. There's only so much chronological time available. Then how do you expect to go from high activity and high pressure and demand to no stimulus in a split second, and then have the effect of feeling good and feeling well? And sometimes you're successful and other times you're not. And I think it ties into a lot of different layers of this topic, where first of all, if something needs to work on a daily basis, it needs to be as frictionless as possible for you to have access to it. And this is not frictionless. It takes a lot of effort, and willpower is
Right.
scarce. And the nervous system doesn't respond very fast. And yes, 5 minutes a day can do a difference, but if you can do something else whilst you're listening to Audison, whilst you're having a weight vest on, whilst you're having other nervous system central regulation tools around you, and you can make them easily available, you're getting the same thing whilst not needing to change a lot around your life.
Precisely.
Right? You can listen to Audison for 10 minutes, which you said was the effect, the minimal of valuable time that you need in order for you to get an effect from it. Well, you need to have breaks anyway. So if you put Audison on while you have a break or while you work, then you already have a little bit of time spent by regulating your nervous system, by controlling the sensorial stimulation that the world offers, right? That's
You
why I
do.
love that.
You do, but as I said, the breaks are not necessary for the vast majority of people. Listening to music while doing a number of daily tasks is the norm. So we're not habit breaking here, we're habit optimizing. So we listen to music. I listen to music when I cook. I love to listen to music when I cook. I listen to music when I make the kids' lunch boxes in the morning. I listen to music when I do certain aspects of my work, not the deep writing that I do, but if I'm, as I was this morning, playing around on a website, trying to fix features, then yeah, music is fantastic. But now I don't have to think, okay, I'll go into my library. What music shall I choose? What do I feel like today? Audicin is just frictionless. Click and go. There's a playlist there. Work with a flow. That'll do. 45 minutes. Where not only I can regulate my nervous system and know that the sensory stimulation is doing me good during that time, but because of the way that we curate the playlists and alter the brainwave function, we can actually help you get into optimized working states. So in
Mm.
that case, flow, that experience where you lose all track of time and you think, wow, I got a lot done now. And where's that hour gone? That's one of those golden seeking moments. It's not only good, people think of it as a sort of productivity outcome. Yeah, it is. You might get more work done. But regular experiences of flow are so important to well-being because you feel your sense of autonomy, you feel your sense of place, you feel you're contributing, you're making a difference. So yes, you can see it in a work context, but making our busy lives easier and helping us have those experiences of flow are critical. And that's what Audicin is really, really good for. Really good, in my opinion. I've definitely, even people say to me, as a music psychologist, has knowing what music is spoilt it for you? In no sense. Does me knowing exactly how Audicin is made and exactly how the neuroscience works stop it working for me? No, because this is pre-conscious stuff. This is affecting brainwave speed. I know what every single note is doing, and it will still work for me.
And I guess the beauty is also because you can do it whilst you're active with another thing, right? Whilst you're working, whilst you're having a break, whilst you're taking a coffee, rehydrating, taking a walk, whatever. Even if you're highly conscious of how it's made because you're focusing on another activity, which, by the way, it also helps to do, right? Because it's regulating the brain waves.
Totally.
Then yeah, it's not just about productivity, as you say, but if you think about it in a flow centric way, then it's helping you support in multitudes of ways, right? Because if you look at flow, it's divided into different phases, and you need to recover as well as you need to be in the state. It's not an 100% always active kind of situation, or there's a balance that is happening. And so
Totally. And that's the psychology behind the way Audicin is curated has all that in mind. So some people are coming into this, this knowledge of, oh, there are these different brainwave bands, and this brainwave band is good for this activity. So I'll just whack that on and listen to that. That might have an effect for you, depending on how good the sound quality is, which is not great in most cases. But in no way has it been curated for your needs in terms of psychological state. If you want to get into a good flow state, you've got to build up to it properly. And like you said, if you want to have a chance of having many experiences of flow during the day without being exhausted, you've got to have a well-designed trajectory of sound. So Audicin has that. It's built from, we compose every single song using music psychology principles, so it is effective in the background. We use the neuroscience in order to create the right brainwave states for whatever nervous system state the person needs to be in, from deep sleep all the way up to high creativity. And then we curate the playlists for the situations that you need. I was listening to I Didn't Sleep Well this morning. I Didn't Sleep Well is one of my favorite playlists. I have a disabled child who very often has severe sleep disruption, and I could just put my headphones on, listen to I Didn't Sleep Well, and I could feel the shakes going down from my body trying to restart itself when it really doesn't want to, when all it wants to do is rest. But I have to get up. So there's a nervous system dysregulation state there. And the calming effect of that playlist is designed exactly for that situation. And you can only do that with proper curation, with understanding how the hormone changes and how the diurnal rhythms of the body change and how you need to match that in order to help that person regulate in that state.
I love that. I mean, I've seen it work on so many layers. I've had people come as guests, and they were very stressed in their daily lives, and I put it on in the background and didn't really say anything, but I could see within minutes how the whole atmosphere of the environment started to change, and the whole body language started to change. So it's very, very powerful.
You see the shoulders drop, don't you?
Yeah.
You just see
the mimics of the facial musculature just changes. I'm very perceptive in face, and so I always look for little cues. But I could definitely tell that the musculature around the eyes that are there to kind of focus in different ways, they seem to relax in a different way as well. And so those are very interesting cues for me to pursue. And I love all of this because I myself, I'm diagnosed with inattentive ADHD, and so I'm looking for nervous system regulation on a daily basis in order for me to manage myself. And it's also been a vessel for me to understand how all nervous system kind of benefits from them. It helps me manage symptoms, but for other people, it's just the same. The symptoms are just a little different because you're faced with other challenges that I might not be facing. So I love that, and it's very interesting, and I love all these things because it's really really powerful, and I can see it even if you don't tell them, and that's always the magic, right? While you're
Right.
people are unaware, and you see the effects of it very clearly, and so I like to use it whenever I have guests, and I also like to use it whenever I can.
That's wonderful to hear. You didn't tell me before that you were doing that.
No.
That's wonderful. That's really good to hear. Yeah, that brings me so much joy. That's why I'm doing this.
Mm.
When we hear that someone is able to cope better with their day-to-day life, and that might be that all of a sudden they're not in quite so much back or shoulder pain, or their stomach might be feeling better. They could be sleeping better. That's I always knew that music could do this.
Mm.
But being able to provide music that is designed in all these multiple ways to be as good as it can be, and to know that it is really changing people's lives for the better is just, yeah, that's what gets me through the sleepless nights.
Well, I'm very appreciative of the work that you're doing, and everyone else is doing in this space, be it one direction or another.
Thank you.
Well, let me just ask you an open question. What else would you like to share with the audience and the people out there? What would you like to talk about? Because I've asked a bunch of questions, but I think it'd be interesting to just open up whatever you want to pursue, and then I can ask my questions afterwards.
Sure. So we have talked about nervous system regulation during this conversation. But I would really like to open that up in terms of awareness, because it is growing. People are coming to the understanding that nervous system balance, and by the nervous system, people sometimes think this is sort of the nerves. You see a picture of the body and the nerves that are holding. The nervous system is made up of the central nervous system, which is the brain, and the peripheral nervous system, which is everything else. And it's not just nerves as in firing impulses. You touch a hot surface and your finger fires back. That's a nerve response. But the nervous system incorporates all the hormonal activity as well, and the way we respond to our environment. So it really is our global body system. And when it's put under too much pressure, the impacts are very individual. And what I've learned in working with Audicin is the sad truth is that we are very good at pushing the body and brain and working in an overstimulated state for a very long time. And I saw a general practitioner, a doctor, to draw this up, that you put yourself in a situation where you're dealing with a lot of chronic stress day in, day out, and we can cope for a long time with that. But when it's too much, the drop is very sudden. And we are not aware for a long time that we're so high up here.
Yeah.
Because the symptomology can be so individual. The person might be having migraines, they might be having eye pain, they might be having neck pain, they might be having digestive issues, they might be having limb problems, aching bones. there's so many different combinations of symptomologies. And I think very often people go to the medical profession and each of these individual symptomologies can be treated. Pain can be treated. Excess stomach acid can be treated. Physiotherapy can be applied. Massages can be applied to the muscles and can provide some relief. But I think what I would like to raise awareness of, if I could, is that this underlying global nervous system is behind many of these symptomologies for us in daily life. And that the global whole body brain approach to treating people who are living with discomfort in their daily lives is super important as we go forward. You and I have spoken about this conflict between specialism and globalization, and that the human race has been really fantastic in advancing because of specialization. You know, people have become experts in this very specific field, and I'm incredibly grateful. You know, with my son's condition, I'm incredibly grateful for every specialist in autism and what they do to advance the knowledge of that field. But because the nervous system is such a complex global aspect of our being, I think we need to reorient our view very often and think, could this be due to a central overstimulation of the nervous system? And if we address that, can we take down aspects of this symptomology first before we leap to multiple courses of individualized treatment of different symptoms?
Yeah, very powerful. As you said, we talked a little bit about specialization and globalization, right? And so I think we talked about this before, and I told you my opinion that the specialists, it's amazing, and we need to keep doing that. We need to specialize even deeper, and we also need to globalize. We need to have some sort of informational, cultural sharing mechanisms that allows us to bridge it just a little bit, like you're doing with you going corporate, right, where you're bridging the scientific world with the practical world. So we need to find new solutions around that in order for us to have the interdisciplinary connection of the specialists and have globalists expert that are master of none, expert of nothing, right, and master of none, but still generalists at everything. To tie together these disciplines and have little nugget knowledge, and then keep that as like an overarching, so we can connect it to the system and see the connections. And I guess immersive technology is going to allow us to do that more efficient as we can explore ideas. But we also need people to move in that direction and have the realization of balance in essence, right? We need to look at things from the top down and from the bottom up. We need to look at if we want to go, we need to slow as well, and have the everything in between in order for us to facilitate that. And I guess another key factor that I want to tie into this is what we talked about earlier, is to make it frictionless. How can we implement this as easy as possible, so it doesn't really, what's the easiest solution for this problem? And I guess, it's, as a person with ADHD, for me, it's always looking for this solution. It's something that I specialize in, is finding the most efficient solution that is not going to cause me a lot of effort, because chances are I'm not going to do it if it's too hard. And as we're moving in this short form content, very stimulating environment, I see even people that don't have this condition have the same problems, because they're also not able to do the things anymore. They're lacking focus. They're lacking the ability to recuperate and relax and have the transition. So balance and make all of the things frictionless, because friction is the lubrication for the daily lives activity. That's why I love things like Audison, where you click a button and then it goes, and you can just do it while you do other things. You're stacking it on top of what you're already doing. So it's not as much to change what you're doing in your life, but changing it, how you're doing it a little bit. And I think that's something that people can apply very fast.
Change it up.
meditation's not the solution. If you love to meditate, then you can use stuff such as Audicin to help yourself come closer to the state, and then go in and have the the stimulation down regulation before you go into like a no activity state, and
Right.
so you're able to go into these better, right? So you can use it for that as well, but make
You
it
totally can.
frictionless, and make it easy to do, and don't change what we're doing, but how we're doing it. I think we're also looking for something new to do,
Hmm.
but that's kind of the problem. We're doing too much, we're too stimulated, so let's
Hmm.
change how we're doing things first, because it's easier
Right.
to apply. And I guess
Yes.
Audison is one thing to do that, and there's many other tools. Vicky, I want to explore some practical ways. I think that the easiest practical ways would be download Audison and try it. That's one
Please.
practical thing.
I invite
Um,
everybody.
but what are other practical ways people could integrate some of the knowledge that we've talked about, and maybe some of the things that we haven't talked about?
So in terms of nervous system regulation,
Yeah, let's go broad, right? Nervous system regulation, but also music in general. Like how could they apply some
uh,
of the things? Um, yeah, let's go as broad as you want.
so absolutely, people can try Audison for free. It's available for free trial, so absolutely give it a go. And wherever you apply music in your everyday life, there will be a playlist within there that you can try. And one of the things I love about Audison, because I'm such a passionate music person, is that having a tool like Audicin, which I know is not only effective, but it will also release kind of my music that I was self-medicating with during my day, and can return it to my personal private spaces when I really want to listen to it, when I really want to enjoy
Mm,
it. I'm not sort of tying it up with being an aid to my day. I love John Lennon so much that I don't want him to have to be there for me when I'm fixing a website. I want to be able to, lie back and listen to him on vinyl. And
mm,
I can do that again. And I think there's nothing wrong. I used to be very romantic about music and really push back against the idea of it being functional,
yep.
you know? But music, as well as being, part of really a romantic core of someone like myself, it is a tool. It is something that humans invented for a need. It didn't crawl out of the sea and it didn't fall out of a tree and we went, oh, look, music, let's see what that does. Humans
Hmm.
made it. Um, and evolutionary music psychology will tell us for probably a number of different reasons that we found to be effective, from communication to effectively caring for developing children and babies, through to mating displays. There's all different evolutionary explanations as to why music became so culturally important in human life. But there's a bit of a pushback against this idea that it can be functional, but it always was to a
Hmm.
degree.
Hmm.
And yes, it gives pleasure and it gives transcendence and it gives wonder, and we should celebrate and enjoy that, and also have it as a functional tool, you know, to be able to make life better in all different ways. And there's nothing wrong with thinking of music in that functional way. So how do we optimize the music that is intended to be functional? Audicin is intended to help you. It is intended to be functional. And we're not shying away from that, because in order to be effective, we need to honor its functional roots, from every single
Hmm.
note and rhythm that goes in there to the brainwave beats that go in there to how I curate it. It has to be um, effective for purpose. And that's, I think, where people could start to enjoy music for all of its different reasons, and that would be the move from intuitive to informative tagline, is that what music is best for what situation. And in medicine, that's kind of the way we're going as well, isn't it? Personalized medicine. We're going to look at people's genes and we're going to look at people's biomes and think, what medicine would we recommend? They're already doing that. I was reading the other day, I think it was with glaucoma. They're able to test genetically and advise on the right treatment pathway for a person depending on their genes. So that personalization, making it optimal for that particular person, is the way that we're going. And music, the very best music care, will follow that as well, and ultimately allow us to enjoy music in all the wondrous ways that it affords to our brain and body.
I just wanted to pause because I wanted to sink in. I guess everything in life is functional. And even if the function is being autotelic for its own sake, there is a function.
Quite right. Quite right.
So you define the function for yourself. And as you're saying, use the information of the specialists in order for you to apply it in certain situations for you to have a more pleasurable life. I don't want to see happy because I'm not a fan of happy, but a more pleasurable life, right? Because some of the most challenging things in life can be the most pleasurable, even though they're very difficult as you're in them, and you might not feel happy, but you overcoming them can be a tremendous sense of pleasure.
Yeah, we can talk about well-being, I think, as a general underlying factor, because the thing I like about well-being is this division between the hedonic and the eudaimonic well-being. So the hedonic is the immediate sensory-seeking, short-term pleasure. And yes, that is important. Absolutely. Wouldn't want a life without it. But the eudaimonic well-being is that sense of self, sense of purpose, sense of place. I'm moving forward. In whatever journey, in whatever place I am, I belong here, I'm wanted here, and I'm moving forward. So that sense of eudaimonic well-being, I think, is really critical going forward, alongside the hedonic. So and music offers both.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, I like to see hedonic always gets you going, but eudaimonic keeps you going.
Right. Beautiful.
Vicky, I want to be respectful of your time. Where can people connect with you? Obviously, Audicin will be in the show notes, so you can click there. Whatever else you want to share, and then we'll jump off. Please,
yes, you can find me at Audison, where I spend most of my days. We're across all the social medias, on our website, audicin.com, obviously. And if you wish to look for me individually, you can find Dr. Vicky Williamson across the social medias too. And I also curate my own blog, musicpsychology.co.uk. So you can find me there and my own individual writings there as well.
Okay. Thank you so much, Vicky, for being on. It's been a pleasure. It's been a treasure trove of information.
Thank you, Kevin.
And thank you, listeners, for listening in. And I hope you have gotten some sort of value from this. And you'll hear me the next time, and hopefully I'll hear from you.
Thanks for checking out this episode of GameWell, the podcast to a thriving future in games. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.